Welcome to episode 36 of Everything EOS. I'm Zack Gall, in-house EOS cheerleader here at ICO Alert, the trusted ICO discovery platform.
And I'm...
Visit ICOalert.com, the most complete calendar of all active and upcoming ICOs. And I'm being joined today with my hackathon teammate and fellow ICO Alertian, Peter Keay.
Hey, what's up? I'm known as Bitgenstein on the webs.
Along with, as always, the founder and CEO of block producer Cypherglass, Rob Finch.
Thank you all so much for joining us for yet another episode of Everything EOS. We're going to kick it off. We have some exciting news that you probably saw on Twitter, but we're going to break it all down and tell you what it means in just a sec. Before we get started, I just wanted to thank you all so much for continuing to leave those positive comments on the videos and on the podcast that we do. It means a ton to us, and it gets us excited to do these episodes. Before we get started, I do need to mention that this podcast is not sponsored. We don't receive any compensation for doing this podcast. Zack Gall, Peter, and I are just three excited members of the EOS community.
We used to be excited, not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore.
Yeah, we're super excited. I can't wait for today.
100%. And we do have to disclose, of course, that all of us do hold EOS tokens. We may also be talking a little bit about DICE and some other things, so we'll just go ahead and disclose that as well. But yeah, please don't take any of our opinions that we talk about during the show as legal, financial, tax, professional, or any other kind of advice. We're simply just talking about our opinions about open source software.
All right, P, you can take my line. You got to remind people to like and subscribe and smash buttons. Go ahead.
Okay. Smash it.
Remember to belt that like button. It really helps us out if you give us good reviews on YouTube, give us good reviews on iTunes, wherever you're listening. Help more people find the show by hitting like, subscribe, share, all the stuff.
Oh, that was great. All right, so on today's podcast, we're going to be discussing Galaxy Digital's recent investment into Mythical Games and what that means for EOS.io. And we're also going to recap our experiences from the hackathon last weekend. Let's just get to it, guys.
That's where that sound effect comes from.
All right, so let's just kick this off. Pete's a new member of the Everything EOS crew here. He will be somewhat a recurring member moving forward. He's a really interesting individual. He's worked with me here at ICO Alert since what? When did you start here?
February.
Why don't you give a little bit about your background?
I'm Peter Keay. I have a background both in programming and in writing content, mostly for video games, actually, which we'll talk about later. And was at the EOS Hackathon with Zack Gall. I was the C++ dev, smart contract guy. I also like humanities, philosophy, stuff like that, and how they intersect with crypto in the future we want to build. I'm interested in universal resource inheritance, which we should talk about at some point. And all around, love EOS and the crypto space.
Yeah, if you guys heard a universal resource inheritance podcast over, I don't know, like the last 2 weeks, that was this guy here. You probably don't know him. He doesn't do video very frequently.
Yeah, that's going to change soon.
So nice. Rob, you're remote. Why don't we explain the situation?
Yeah, so I actually I am in Virginia right now. So, of course, I have that place in Pittsburgh. Just got another place in Virginia to be closer to family and a bunch of friends. I have like 60-plus family members who live in the city. So, I got another place. And one of my cats, as you can see, is trying to join in on the fun. So, I'll be going back and forth. There'll be some times where I'm in the studio with you guys. There'll be some times where I'm on the road. But either way, we're going to make it work and keep these episodes coming.
All right. So you were the one that broke the news in the first place on Twitter with the 200-plus likes and 1 million retweets. Why don't you introduce the Mythical Games investment and explain what it means to you and to EOSI as a whole?
Absolutely. So if you guys saw over the last week or so, we got a new announcement from Galaxy Digital that finally came out. Galaxy Digital, run by Mike Novogratz, is one of those EOS VC funds. So there are 5 right now that are trying to, dish out that $1 billion that Block One has put up to fund dApps on EOS. And what we saw recently was actually a power team of executives and game designers and all these different people that left a bunch of different companies. Activision, which I guess now is Activision Blizzard, but they named Activision. Hold on, I got to move my cat. They named Activision and Blizzard separately, but then you also have people from companies like Niantic. One of the founders, John Linden of Mythical Games, which is the company that got the investment, actually sold his last mobile game company to Niantic, who is, of course, the makers of Pokemon Go. So really a power team of people that have worked on World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, some huge mobile games, all kinds of stuff, and they're all coming together to build games on EOS. And the most exciting part about it, I think, is not just that they're building on EOS or doing all these things, but they're trying to build player-created and player-owned economies on EOS, which is pretty awesome. And I think we should unpack that concept a little bit.
So I actually found a really interesting video. So you gave some insight of the team. I'm just going to walk through the background of some of these members of the team. And I'm going to let the CEO introduce himself on a video clip here. But the CEO, his name's John Linden. He, like Rob said, he's a former studio head at Activision. He was the president of the Niantic acquired Seismic Games. Let's just go to the clip. He does a better job of introducing himself than I can.
So my name is John Linden. I've been in the game industry for quite a while. I originally started off on kind of the big publisher side or the big developer side. So I was a studio head at Activision for about 4.5 years, mostly in Call of Duty. So we spent a lot of time in Call of Duty and the beast that was Call of Duty. And then also did a Skylanders game in mobile. We did kind of a very innovative kind of physical trading card where you actually paid at the retail store with physical trading cards, which was opened up a whole amazing can of worms with Apple and Google, which I think is going to relate to what we're going to see with the crypto world. And then most recently, I've been at Seismic Games. So we had a game called Marvel Strike Force was our most recent game. So it was a top 25 mobile game that came out in May, and then we recently sold that to Niantic in June.
All right, so yeah, John Linden, complete rock star, and also their chief compliance officer. Did you say it's Jamie Jackson?
Jamie Jackson, yeah, CCO.
Is it a boy or girl?
He's male. Yes.
It's a male. So Jamie Jackson's also another former studio head at Activision. So we got two Activision heads. Their chief product officer, Stephen Cunningham, is a former director of product management at Yahoo. And then their head of blockchain is Rudy Koch, who is a former senior producer at a company that Rob's familiar with, Blizzard.
Yeah, which I think is part of Activision now. Activision bought Blizzard a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Activision Blizzard.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Quite unfortunately.
We got all these conglomerates forming. We have Tencent now owns Rockstar, Take-Two, 2K, you know. But, hey, yeah.
So who wants to give the background on Activision and Blizzard? Because this is a really big deal, but I don't know. If you didn't know who they were, it might not seem like as big of a deal. Who wants to take the ball on that one?
I mean, Blizzard is obviously known for, I'll do the Blizzard part if you want to do the Activision part, Pete. Yeah. So Blizzard is known for, some pretty big games. Obviously, World of Warcraft is one as being the biggest MMORPG, massively multiplayer online role-playing game that's ever existed. They, of course, had the StarCraft franchise, Diablo franchise, and now they have Hearthstone and Overwatch, which has this huge tournament. So Blizzard has been somebody that's been there for a while, mostly in the PC gaming space, but now, of course, is moving to mobile and kind of diverting their efforts there. But I talked with Rudy actually in Telegram. He's very active in the Mythical Games Telegram, and we had a little discussion about what he worked on at World of Warcraft, and he did like PvP and was working on class design and all kinds of stuff. So it was really cool to finally be able to talk to somebody that worked on a game that I've put 400 plus days of playtime into. So I hope that over the next couple of years, maybe they'll build like a World of Warcraft with tokenized items or some kind of player-owned economy.
Sounds like the real deal.
Yeah, and then, of course, Activision picked up Blizzard. Activision's a huge name. If you were in a PlayStation, they did the Tony Hawk, they did Spyro. More recently, they did Destiny, they did Call of Duty, all these big series. And for those of you non-gamers, they did Candy Crush Saga. But they made something like $7 billion in revenue last year. Wow. They're the biggest game company in terms of revenue in the Americas and Europe. Wow. Huge company, lots of great experience. This team has years and years of experience with Activision and smaller studios.
So I thought it was funny because a couple weeks ago, I think the episode we did right before the hackathon, Rob, we kind of brought up those rumors from a couple months ago. So I have it on my screen. I'll put it on everyone else's screen. But someone in Reddit, it says Workcoin, which I'm pretty sure that's the team behind the EOS Lynx wallet. So Fred, if you're watching, this is Fred's probably quote. He said, "Met today with a very impressive game developer, and we could say with 100% confidence that Blizzard/Activision quality games are headed to EOS blockchain within 6 months. Other blockchains, such as Hashgraph, etc., within 12 months. CryptoKitties may be the start, but Fortnite/World of Warcraft on EOS with tradable, configurable assets, MMOGs, are coming in 2019. So that rumor was proven to be true.
Assuming that
who would have thought? I think
we got to see what their first game is going to be. Obviously, they put out the Blancos trailer, which I think it looks like you can basically create or buy some kind of unique avatar, similar to how you'd buy a CryptoKitty, and then you battle it out. I guess you have a dance battle or something. They haven't really released what the game is about, but we know it's about dancing and unique characters, so we'll see.
So I have a little bit of game features in front of me. I'll read them for the people listening, and I'll put them on the screen for anyone watching here on YouTube. It says players will be able to collect and use all different types of Blanco characters thanks to blockchain. Players will acquire block assets in various ways to help them build and play with their own block. so you're going to go to these block parties, and each party, these Blankos characters are going to interact with each other and influence each other, and they'll be able to buy and sell different items. Items will be bought and sold in marketplaces.
Oh, wow.
The interesting part is that it says it offers a world of possibilities, not only for gamers, but also for content creators and professional artists or brands to experiment with their unique designs, skins, and characteristics. So basically, it's gonna be a marketplace to allow designers and artists to basically monetize their work through this in-game marketplace by buying and selling their digital items.
Where did you find that info, by the way? That's all new stuff that I haven't heard, but that's exciting.
So if you have the notes in front of you, I have some links in there.
Yeah, that's
okay, cool. Yeah, I'll check it out.
It's from one of the press releases. I mean, every day a different press release is coming out, it seems like, with more and more details. So
yeah, I totally missed that one, but that's exciting. It sounds like you might actually get a block. Maybe you get like a virtual piece of land that you can own, and you have people come over to it, and that sort of expands the concept of the game a lot, other than just having a dance battle. So I'm curious to see what it's going to be like next year.
Yeah, so, next year is fast. 2019, even for a traditional game, that is ambitious. Yeah. And I wonder how long they've actually been working on this behind the scenes. It must have been a long time. But that's really fast, and it's fantastic news, especially given current market conditions. We're all looking for a little bit of hopefulness.
Definitely. Right? Well, I think the most exciting part about all this also is that they said they're going to be announcing their full lineup of games. So it sounds like we might actually get another announcement about another game before this one actually releases, which would be pretty cool. But they also did mention they're building games on PC, Mac, mobile, and console, which I thought was pretty crazy. Like, imagine buying a console game, you're playing on your Xbox, your PS4, or whatever, and the items that you own are stored on the EOS blockchain. I just think that's going to be so cool to see.
Wow.
So the intro video I played earlier that let John Linden introduce himself. That video is from back in October, but apparently, if reading through the comments, or the link that I found that video from, he's been talking about blockchain since at least May. He's been like really hardcore talking about blockchain based stuff, but he's still with Seismic Games. So it's kind of a mystery to everyone who was interacting with him what he had up his sleeve, and it was finally announced. So I think we're going to see more information now that he doesn't have to keep everything under lock and key. And
well, and that makes sense. I mean, that he would leave Seismic Games to pursue this, because I'm betting that they didn't want to move forward with blockchain. I just watched like a 15 or 20 minute presentation that he gave at a conference, I think a day or two ago, talking about like, Activision, they're going to take a while to come along and join the blockchain space. They didn't even get into mobile until after Hearthstone got popular, like a decade later, after mobile games were already hitting the mainstream. So maybe they didn't want to work on blockchain games and he really wanted to. So after the acquisition, he kind of left and said, hey, I'm going to go build on EOS.
From what I understand, it looks like Mythical Games is working with all third-party gaming developers. So they're not actually developing any games themselves. They're just handling the kind of like the blockchain piece.
Really?
Yeah. That's from what I've gathered.
So they didn't... I don't know. I think Blankos was developed by them. I could be wrong, but...
No, if someone wants to talk, I'll tell you who created it. It's just going to take me a second to find out.
Well, I mean, as of about a month ago, there was a blockchain game alliance announced. I know Ubisoft joined. Ubisoft was demoing some kind of game they created on Ethereum. I know. And so there are these larger developers are kind of looking at it. As you said, Rob, they'll probably be a little slow to move into it, but there is a little bit more interest, so it wouldn't surprise me. Have you found what you're looking for yet? I filled for you.
Nah, I'm still looking.
I mean, we'll see. I think one of the biggest...
specifically read something that said that they're going to use a different game studio for like all their games they're coming out with. Like they're not a...
I had seen in that keynote, he did mention like, hey, this is something that we can take to an existing game and apply it to that just by tokenizing the items or adding some other kind of layer that's tokenized, where you don't have to sort of build it from scratch with the goal that it's going to run on a blockchain. So maybe that's what he was referencing, but maybe Blankos is also the case. We'll have to ask in their Telegram.
Well, there's definitely things going on behind the scenes. Do you remember Hashcraft? Not Hashgraph, Hashcraft?
No.
Ubisoft, it was back in maybe September. They suddenly unveiled this blockchain concept game that was kind of like Minecraft and No Man's Sky mixed, and the new, better No Man's Sky, not the original, terrible No Man's Sky. And it was on Ethereum, and it wasn't really like we're going to create this game. It was a concept that they were pushing. So Sony's moving towards blockchain on PlayStation Network to record actions and stuff like that. Epic Games has partnered with a blockchain firm, rumoredly. So there are other players coming in, and I'm glad to see Mythical has plans to move so quickly. because there's going to be competition in the space.
I found the information. It's called Third Kind Games. That's the independent game studio that they partnered with for Blankos. So I think there's going to be more. I found another interesting article. I'm going to put all these articles in the description so that everyone else could read. But hearing John Linden, a quote where he talks about hiding complexity. So he says, another significant aspect of Mythical Games' approach is how it will present its blockchain features to gamers. The short answer is it won't. Partly this is because it's running on EOS, which has a very complex onboarding process in terms of setting up a wallet and staking EOS to gain access to the blockchain. But partly because Linden believes how any blockchain works is irrelevant to the vast majority of users. He says, quote, they won't know it is a blockchain because we are running on EOS. We can stake for users and hide fees, he says. The platform's marketplace will also run using fiat currency, although power users will be able to peel away this abstraction and handle their own wallet keys if they want to.
Perfect.
So nice. This is a concept that you talked about a lot.
Yeah, because they could have the private key set up. So whenever you sign up for Blankos, what's the cost right now of setting up a wallet, Rob? Like 50 cents, $1?
It's probably about $1 now with the price of EOS, maybe less. So maybe 60 cents.
They could technically eat that cost up front and then charge the fee if you want to privatize your key. So we know how to switch an owner active key on EOS. It's a pretty simple process. So that's where they could actually charge you the money to recoup their $1 that they invested in your wallet up front. Is if you want to take ownership of your active key, they could just do an owner active key swap and give your private key, and that's where they might charge you $1 or $2 to recoup their costs, or maybe they'll charge you $5. Who knows how the fee models are going to work?
I think even beyond that, I mean, they could set it up where they don't even need to make an EOS account for you to start it off. Maybe they store like your items with 10,000 other people's items in one EOS account, and they have in their own internal database, like a centralized database, hey, this belongs to this person, this belongs to this person. And then if you want to, you can withdraw to your own wallet or maybe create one in the app. So I think they can probably avoid that fee altogether for the people that don't actually want to handle all their own stuff and just want it to act like a normal game.
Right.
So, Rob, let's backtrack a little bit. So this is really big news this week. Let's go back to last week into the hackathon. Why don't you tell us your perspective? Because Pete and I were kind of busy hacking away and coding. What was your experience like as a mentor at the hackathon?
Oh my God, it was crazy. First of all, huge shout out to all the people that came up to not only myself but also Zach and introduced themselves and said, "Hey, we saw your videos. We saw, we love watching everything EOS." It's so cool not only to see obviously people talking about everything EOS in the comment section below this video, but also when you take it in person and you're sitting down and talking with people that watch your show on a weekly basis, it's just so humbling. So huge shout out to everybody that came up to us and said hello. But it was a really incredible experience. I mean, there were 500 plus people trying to build dApps on EOS in the same building over that 26-ish hour period when you can actually hack. The whole thing's about 36 hours. But I mean, the energy there in that place is just totally contagious. I was super excited and like ready to go the entire time. But to sort of sum it all up, I think over the course of the weekend, I met some incredibly smart people building some really cool stuff. And I think the winners were, chosen correctly. They had some cool ones like Nougat that won first place for a decentralized GitHub. But definitely an exhausting time as well. I know at the end of it, all the people that were hacking and all the people that were mentoring, like I was, were just totally spent. So even on Monday, though, we still managed to get up and go to the Scaling Blockchain conference. And I did a keynote speech there and a panel, and we did an Everything EOS episode there. So it was still cool, and we sort of squeezed that last bit of energy out of ourselves, I think, to make it happen. But I can't wait for next year and all the hackathons.
I just want to put it on the record. So I just released my final Scaling Blockchain video last night, which was Monday. I just want to let everyone know for the record that I almost died during doing those podcasts. I risked my life.
It's true. Yeah.
So I don't think I've ever mentioned on the show before, but I'm type 1 diabetic. So like I got to take insulin with all my meals. I've got this like Bluetooth thing on my arm. It's like constantly sending like my blood sugars to my phone. Like I'm like in my element. I'm doing these podcasts and my phone's just going crazy because it's a medical device whenever it's talking about like whenever it's telling me I have a low blood sugar. But I'm like in this podcast, I'm like, I'll be done soon. I had to cut it out of the video so you didn't see, but I tossed my phone like 30 feet away from myself so you couldn't hear the alarm going off. So not only did I like get no sleep, so the hackathon started about 8 a.m. like check-in on Saturday. So I was there by 8 a.m. on Saturday. We did not sleep more than 2 hours throughout the night on Saturday night. Then all through Sunday, we're finishing up our pitch, working on our project. And then Sunday night, right after the hackathon, Pete and I went to all the different social events. We ended up meeting up with Mike Novogratz and SVK Crypto and all kinds of other cool people that we couldn't even dream of meeting like prior to this. Yeah. So we didn't get much sleep Sunday night, got in late, and then straight into Monday morning, got to be at the conference at 8 a.m., start recording podcasts. It was a marathon. What was your experience like, Pete?
Oh man, same thing. It was. I'm I guess newer to the EOS community. Haven't been around as long as you guys, but and while you were making memes there at the hackathon, I was actually writing code in C++. Zach was coding over there in Photoshop.
Yeah, I walked by your table. I can totally vouch for that because I walked by your table one time and I see a photo of Dan and you have like a championship belt and your Photoshop it in, and I was like, how is this relevant to what you guys are building?
So my plan for the hackathon was I didn't know what our chances were of winning the hackathon. I got more bullish on winning towards the end, and Pete could sort of tell the story about our pitch.
Late, man.
But
it's a cool story.
My whole plan was to win the $3,000 best social media post. Like we made this really good like highlight video, which I could even maybe even play while I'll put it up while I'm talking here, so you could watch the highlights while I talk. But we made this really cool video. It was like a team effort. Evan Schindler, who was also on our team, he helped. He mostly did all the editing for that. And I posted that, and I thought that was going to be enough to win. But the girl who ended up did win, the girl who won, she did an amazing job. So she kicked my ass like outright, but I was getting desperate at the end. So we're in like the one last hour of the contest. I'm like, I need more engagement. I need more posts. So I start making memes and posting them to the EOS Hackathon hashtag, just trying desperately to do whatever I could to win.
You were crafting after the dedeadline. I had to remind you that the deadline was 1 p.m. I was like, Jack, it's over. Stop.
I was so
Stop.
embarrassed.
Put the memes away.
So Pete, why don't you talk about our pitch? Because it was really cool. We actually got to pitch to Mike Novogratz.
Oh yeah,
this is such a cool story.
Brian from EOS VC was there too, and a mentor that I didn't recognize. But we pitched him our product, which has to do with game marketplaces. Exactly what we were talking about. We came up with a way to incentivize content creators to make more content because they make money off it when it sells, and to incentivize players to buy cool items, use cool items, play well with cool items. We thought it was a pretty cool project. Our UI guy, shout out to Ben, who's not from anywhere around here. He stayed overnight. I wrote the contract. Zach made all the memes we didn't use in the presentation. And Evan put our pitch together, threw a pitch, hardball at Mike Novogratz. Reportedly, he gave us a great score. He told us afterwards he wanted to see us up there, but with the other judges and the way the scores worked out, it didn't work out. It was great to meet Mike. I had
why don't we throw up the picture of you with Mike? So Rob's got a picture with Dan, but Pete's got one with Novogratz.
Yeah, and I don't know what that jacket
awesome.
is.
The Novable.
I kind of hate love that jacket. What do you think about that jacket?
Yeah, Rob, did you see his jacket?
Oh yeah, I thought it was great. I went up and I said hello to him in like the happy hour after, and just said, hey, I wanted to know if the deals they were doing were equity deals or token deals, and he like explained that. He said High Fidelity was equity, and I think Everpedia was like a mix of tokens and equity. But beyond that, I was like, hey, by the way, we have a podcast, Everything EOS, and my friend Zach always calls you Mike Novable, and he like laughed, and then I walked away. But he was awesome. He had like these white pants with a red stripe down the side and this crazy like pattern jacket. It was cool.
Yeah, I mean, in this picture, I'm explaining to him that my crypto kitty, my prize crypto kitty, was Mike Novogratz. And it wasn't super valuable, maybe generation 5 or 9 or something. And I just told him it just sold. I just sold it a few weeks before this picture for $3.
Nice. Hey, that's good.
It was interesting too, because when we were talking to Novogratz, like I was telling him about the podcast, and I talked to him after you talked to him, so I don't know if you even remembered. But we were talking about VR and games and how we think a lot of these blockchain-based use cases are going to be seen first in the gaming industry and then in real life afterwards. And he was this close to telling me some secrets about some upcoming investments. He said, I'm pretty sure he said there's 2 upcoming investments within the next couple weeks. So we saw this Activision one.
This is one, yeah.
So that's one. So I think we could expect the second one to come out here soon. But he almost told me about one of them, probably the one that just got announced this week.
That's crazy.
But he almost told me a few days earlier, and I felt like a super secret insider, but he stopped himself. I wouldn't have had such self-control, because I would have been like the probably dozen other people that came up to us and told us all about their secrets that haven't been announced yet that I can't talk about on the show.
Exactly.
So what
Yeah,
other
it was
stories?
crazy. There are
you
a
got?
lot of people there that are building external dApps on EOS. I mean, well, you go ahead. Tell a story.
I don't. You tell
You
a
have a
story,
story,
Rob. You're the superstar, Rob.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly,
what was mentoring like? Tell us about that. We didn't mentor.
mentoring was cool. I mean, I was like, so my whole goal was like, oh, I'm going for most valuable mentor. So at the end, when they announce all the hackathon winners, there's also a prize for one of the mentors. I think it's like a Nintendo Switch or something. Jay Chung from HK EOS did win it. So huge shout out to Jay. If anybody was going to beat me at it, it had to be Jay. But so the first day I was like, oh yeah, let's go. Like super high energy and going around all the tables. And then that night I went back and got like, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours of sleep, fortunately, and came back in the morning and I was just like really feeling it. Like I'm not used to, first of all, socializing for 15 hours a day and talking to people for that long, but I'm not really used to doing anything for 15 hours a day.
But come on, Rob.
So it was just draining. And then the second day I was a little...
We talked about this.
What?
Didn't you feel like the pretty girl at the dance that everyone wanted to dance with?
Oh,
Everyone
definitely.
knew
Yeah,
you
it was
were?
so crazy. Like so many people came up and recognized me and were like, hey, I love your videos. Hey, everything EOS, like whatever it was. It was really cool to just meet the community out on the ground. But
You had
honestly,
another story. Talk about your hotel room. Was,
oh my God, I forgot. I almost forgot. Okay, so all of the mentors stayed at this one hotel, right? Like that's where Block One put them all up. I had joined very late, thanks to SVK Crypto for getting me in as a mentor at the last second. But because of that, I wasn't like, Block One didn't pay for my hotel or my flight or anything like that. Like they paid for the other mentor. So I got a hotel totally separate from where all the mentors were staying. And it turns out it was the same hotel where Dan and Rob Citizen and all of these other Block One people were staying. So the first day I got there, I'm going up. I had just gone out to look for one of the masks because the air quality was so bad and I got a drink or something. And I came back up to my room and I'm about to open the door and I like put my key card on the door and I look to my left and I'm like, okay, there's two people like hugging. It was like a man and a woman are standing next to each other. And I was like, oh my God, that's Dan Larimer. And I was like, Dan. And I went up and shook his hand and it was him and his wife. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't want to bother you. I was not expecting to see him there. I was waiting like at the hackathon, like, oh, I'll have something like prepared to say. So it caught me totally off guard. And I was like flustered, like, hey, I'm with Cypherglass, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think it came across very well. And then I like tried to go into the wrong hotel room to get back into my room.
your key's not working.
Starstruck.
Yeah, I was like, oh God. And he's then thinking I'm like following him or something. But anyway, so I bumped into him.
As long as you weren't trying to go into his room.
Right, exactly. Now he was down the hall a couple doors.
It was
but,
the
then
weirdest thing at the hackathon. Like Dan was like Jesus there. Like he couldn't go anywhere without there being a line. That's why I don't have a picture with Dan Larimer, is because I felt so awkward waiting in line to meet this man. He's just like a regular person.
Oh yeah,
like
but you gotta,
yeah.
A huge shout out to Dan though for actually coming out and because it's much harder for him to stand in line and answer the same questions over and over and have people take photo. Like he has the bad end of that. So thanks to him for allowing me to take a photo and all these other people. But then I also bumped into Rob Citizen, I think he's the CFO of Block One. And he had a Block One shirt on.
He's the Australian guy. I think he's president. Maybe he's the Australian banker guy, right?
Right, from Jeffries, I think it was.
Yeah, I think so. He took a weird selfie at our table. I have you seen that online yet? I haven't found it. He was the guy that stood behind us and like made us like pretend we were working.
Oh yeah, because I was working. I was sitting there working.
I was memeing.
He was like, "Yeah, take the meme off the screen so I can take this photo."
Yeah,
we're gonna give a shout out to Mark too. Actually,
Mark? Mark was the other guy who was on our team.
Ben was the one coding the front end, allowing me to just BS and meme with everyone.
Mark helped a lot with the concept and the pitch and things like that and some concepts.
So what was your interaction with Rob?
It was good. I shook his hand. I was like, hey, I'm also Rob. Like, you're with Block One, right? I was like, oh, Rob Citizen. When he said Rob, it clicked who he was. And I was like, hey, it's cool. I'll be at the hackathon. Just like a little bit of small talk. And then he got out of the elevator. But he seemed like a really nice dude. He was like, his face lit up when he realized like I was part of the EOS hackathon also. So he seems genuinely excited to be there. And same with pretty much all the Block One people seemed like super excited to be at the event.
And I mean, everyone was really excited to be at that event.
Yeah.
If you're in the EOS community or even the crypto community and you're considering going to conferences or events, I'd strongly recommend hackathons. Even if you don't really hack a lot, even if you're an ideas person or a media person or just want to, meet the community, this was the most shill-free hackathon I've ever been to.
Everyone's chilling on the same team.
Most of the conferences. Most of the conferences
had to go get this.
Yeah, sweet, right?
Oh,
yeah, this amazing merch.
Oh,
we got all the merch.
Speaking of merch, so we talked about t-shirts and shill right before the hackathon. Yeah. So I'm rocking my EOS Blocksmith t-shirt. Thank you, EOS Blocksmith. And
Shios, think outside the blocks.
Whoa, stand up.
All right, standing up.
Got the Shios t-shirt on Pete here. We got the Patagonias.
Hold on. We got the EOS. We got an EOS logo in there.
Oh, yeah.
I got a Biddle shirt.
Always repping.
I got a Biddle shirt. I bargained with somebody, said that they would get on the podcast, but then I forgot what their project is.
Yeah,
so
Rob,
on the podcast. Sorry,
Rob. We've got lots of T-shirts on the way. I got messaged on Telegram by so many people that said they didn't have a shirt at the hackathon. They got my address.
Oh, nice.
So I told them all you were large. They'll be coming to me. We got a CPU emergency coming.
We got Cypherglass shirts.
Aloha EOS. I'm still waiting on my Cypherglass shirt, Rob.
Oh, it's coming. We're getting a good one for you. You know, we don't just want to give you any Cypherglass shirt. It has to be.
I want like a nice flannel comforter for my bed with Cypherglass logos on it.
Oh, it could have like my face, sort of like in a pattern with the logo.
Oh my god, a pillow cover with Rob's face.
Yeah,
you would do Dan's.
You flip it over and Dan is on the other
side.
Oh
god.
Yeah, there you go.
My wife would divorce me.
Oh god. But yeah, it was a cool event all around. I mean, if you have a chance to get to a hackathon next year, and I went up to Brian, not Brian Mailer from EOS VC, but the guy from Angel Hack, and I was like, so are they doing these next year? And he was like about to answer, and then he was like, I can't say anything until it's public. But I can't imagine, with the reception that Block One got, with all the projects that came out of it, I can't imagine them not doing this next year. So if you think, we had about 6 months of hackathons this year and had 4 different hackathons. So next year, I would bet we see 6 to 8, maybe 10 hackathons in all different places around the world, and I'm going to try to go to a lot of them.
And I would love to be as many as possible. And just like we did the live podcasting at the Scaling Blockchain, I think it's worth investigating to see if Block One will let us set up a podcasting area at the hackathon. I don't know if they'll go for that or not.
But then how will you make your memes, Zach?
I don't need to make memes if I'm making great content that could educate the world about EOS.io. I made some contacts with Block One, so I do have a few people I could ping to see if this is even something in the realm of possibility. But if anyone thinks it's a good idea, leave some comments. That'd be nice.
Something I want to mention also of my experience with Block One at the hackathon is it seems they're really, really listening to the community. So I sat down with a guy for probably 10 or 15 minutes who was like a UX researcher talking about, what would help developers get in the ecosystem, what would help me, what are the favorite wallets I've used so far. And really, it seems like they're focused more on releasing a feature complete wallet that you could have, an exchange and a way to make a wallet easily and all these things built into that iOS wallet we've been talking about, rather than an MVP. So I went in, I got a demo from Greg actually at the event of the hardware wallet finally.
Ooh,
and of course, I'm sure it'll change dramatically, I'm sure, from where it starts, but it was very simple, looked very similar to EOS Links. But the cool part was that he showed me signing a transaction with his face. So live on the EOS blockchain, he sent a transaction to somebody else using his face, which was basically accessing the keys in a secure enclave. Now, he did mention there are some interesting things that they sort of have to solve. So because the secure enclave in your iPhone is so secure, if you lose your phone, it's gone. Like you just lost your keys too. There's no recovery seed. There's nothing like that. So they need to build some kind of function into that where maybe you recover with a friend or you do something else.
What about the account recovery feature on EOS? Wouldn't that kind of...
I think that might be possible. That's something I think still has to be implemented, but they could totally put something like that out and then release the wallet. But the interesting thing was he had mentioned he had a conversation with Brendan Bloomer, I guess, and their initial plan was to just put out an MVP, like let's get this wallet out as soon as possible. Let's get it to market and we'll iterate from there. And I think that has shifted a little bit where they're going, okay, there are plenty of MVP wallets out there that all do the same thing. Instead of doing that, let's make sure that when the Block One EOS wallet comes out, it's the best feature complete wallet you can get that interacts with other dApps and you can do everything on your phone. So he mentioned they did solve an issue where, if you want to sign a transaction on EOS Nights, for example, if I'm using the Meet One app to do so, it pops me out of the EOS Nights app and I have to sign the transaction in Meet One and then it pulls me back. But they figured out a way to sort of make all of that happen within the same app you're using. So it seems like there's going to be some big UX improvements there.
By the way, what floor have you gotten to, Rob?
420.
420. I'm not even in the triple digits yet.
Man, and I sold. Oh my God,
I sold those epic items.
I crafted an Excalibur, which is I think like an ancient item or something, and it sold for 50 EOS. It cost me like 30 EOS to make, and I figured, if it doesn't sell, I'll just use it for my character once I hit level 12 or whatever. And I put it up for sale, and it sold for 50 EOS. So EOS Nights has a ton of volume going through it. It's pretty crazy.
So we can't name names, but there were some other prominent members of the community, and this is speculation on their end too, but they were predicting, and Rob, I think you heard the same rumors, that Block One might be working on a browser?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, like, is it going to be an app browser, or is it like a browser where you can go to a website and then, similar to Brave that it's built in? I don't know, but I think whatever that browser is, which I personally think is a dApp browser, it will probably be built into that wallet so that, hey, all I need to do to get into the EOS ecosystem, download this free wallet, make a free account, and boom, you can now play, at that point, hundreds, maybe thousands of dApps that exist.
I can't wait. I'm trying to think of other cool stuff that happened.
One of the topics of discussion that was at this hackathon, everyone was talking about it. That Chinese media group, Rob, I know you interviewed with them, I did too.
Yeah.
A lot of block producers that are making waves, kind of new guys like Aurora. They had presentations on ECAF, the arbitration forum,
ECAF.
right? Yeah, and there was a ban ECAF going on, right? And that was the big topic making waves there, other than hackathon. On the whole, people just came together, and regardless of their disputes, they built projects. They were excited about each other's projects. Seriously, guys, go to the hackathons if you want to go to crypto events. But on the side, when people felt a little less bullish, they talked about ECAF. And what are your guys' thoughts? Have you talked about it on the show? What do you think about ECAF?
So I just put out the podcast with Miles Snyder and Kevin Rose from Aurora BP, Aurora EOS, and EOS New York. And that was, I think, the first time that they both publicly stated they are against ECAF at this point. As far as a base layer arbitration, they're against that, and we are kind of all in agreement that as soon as referendum is ready, someone's going to propose a removal of Article 9, which gives ECAF their authority. And it seems like, at least between the two of them, and then they kind of convinced me that at this point I'm against ECAF also. How about you, Rob?
100%. Yeah, I am as well. And it's so interesting how ECAF even got into power. Like, it's this weird origin story of, like, how were these people chosen? Like, totally unelected members, very similar to the SEC, just unelected people that nobody has any control over, what they're doing, but they happen to sort of govern over the EOS community. And the crazy thing to me that stuck out at the hackathon and at Scaling Blockchain was that talking to people about it, there was not one person I talked to that was in favor of it, but pretty much everybody I talked to that was against it said that they were afraid to come out and say something against it for whatever reason. So it's something where I'm actually putting out a video on it this week, basically our stance that we are also against it. And if you look at the current EOS constitution, technically it hasn't been ratified. It's a placeholder constitution. So technically ECAF doesn't have any power. And I think a lot of the proxies now, including Ashura at Freedom Proxy, are looking at BPs and saying, hey, we're not going to vote for you if you continue to, implement these ECAF orders. So I think even without that article being removed explicitly, I think they're sort of losing power already, which is a very good thing because they're sort of this centralized point of failure in the network.
I'm all for on-chain arbitration, just not at the base layer and opt-in.
And it needs to be
only.
Opt-in. Exactly.
That's it has to be opt-in. The only way you could have permanent transactions and knowing that they're immutable is if there's no way to reverse it on the base layer. Now, if you want to check a box every time you sign something and opt into an arbitration layer, that's great. I think that's more than necessary. I think there should be multiple ECAFs handling that layer of arbitration. But on the base layer only, I am against ECAF.
Right.
Absolutely. I don't think any arbitration on the base layer is bad. You need a free market for arbitrators where if I want, and only if I want, I can go out and have somebody arbitrate over my smart contract or my business deal or whatever it might be.
I think this is a particularly important moment in EOS's development, this Constitution ECAF controversy, because one of the major objections that other chains, proponents of other chains have, is that, well, if I had a transaction on EOS, it could just get reversed by somebody, taking over, some block producer or whatever. If we handle that on the base layer, then that'll just remove that objection and really increase, I think, EOS's reputation among the broader crypto community. It's important to handle, and it's important to handle now before the system gets too big for us to make changes easily,
Well, even, that's another point about ECAF is that when the system gets that big, it doesn't scale. It doesn't scale with one arbitrator, with people who aren't even formally trained in arbitration, who don't have a budget, who don't have a real business model. And a point that Ashura made on Twitter was that these arbitrators, when they actually exist in the free market, they need to have a business model. They don't need to run on donations. They need to be able to make money, whether it's, hey, I'll help you recover your account, prove the owner is yours and you give me 10% of that because having 90% is better than 0%, or maybe it's something else. But they can't be, in my opinion, charities that are just draining money, especially not inflation, out of the EOS ecosystem.
That was kind of one of our topics of conversation with Kevin Rose and Miles Snyder. Was basically, I was asking, like, how are they funded? And they explained to me how they're funded. Whenever they solve the case, they get like a percentage of the ruling. But
wait, they do that now?
I'm pretty sure one of them,
wow.
That's how they explained it. Like, this is, like, we are in
No
the
wonder they
ecosystem,
jumped
and
at that.
we don't really even understand that much about ECAF.
Yeah.
Like,
That's what's crazy is ECAF to me feels like, and maybe this is like, maybe this is too conspiratorial, but it feels like something like 5 years from now, if it didn't get removed, people would be like, oh, that's how the NSA or the government or whatever infiltrated EOS. They set up ECAF at the beginning and nobody actually fought it. Like, it's just amazing that, go ahead.
I love how you call ECAF like the SEC. You said it's kind of like the SEC. It's just a point. It wasn't really.
Yeah, they're just unelected.
I think that you win the battle right there with that language. Just call ECAF the SEC, and people will be against it.
They totally are. I mean, they can basically govern what you do and don't do on the network. Hey, we're going to help this person recover their keys, but how do we really know it's that? And I think a lot of the stuff they've done so far has been good, where they have cryptographic proof that this guy owned the Ethereum address associated with the EOS account, so they can freeze it and eventually help that guy get his funds. But number one, that's not scalable. Number two, it's done way more harm than the good. It's helped those 10 people get their EOS back. But there's definitely a better way, and ECAF is not the way to go about that.
So moving along away from ECAF, but into more FUD we could talk about. It was interesting. Yeah. We'll back up to the hackathon. So after the hackathon, the evening of Sunday night, all three of us went to the Airdrops DAC Mix and Mingle, which happened to have some controversy, I think, last week.
Well, we met with a couple other podcasters. You got that photo of us.
Well, they
Rob, do you want to explain the Airdrops DAC private key hack thingy madoodle?
Yeah, so what basically happened was that the two first clients of Airdrops DAC, which were Higher Vibes and ZKS, so HVT and ZKS, in order to actually claim the tokens and get them issued to you, you need to go and claim them on EOS Toolkit. And basically what happened was somebody found a bug in that claim process where they could just issue, sort of an unlimited amount of tokens to themselves for free. But when they found out about this, they were able to reclaim a lot of those tokens because they were made with Airdrops DAC RAM. So that was a convenient feature where they got basically all of the tokens back other than 2,500 EOS worth. But the controversy arose when somebody found out that the account that did the exploit was created by an account of a BP, and it was EOS.io Singapore, EOS.io SG on the chain. So they were in some way, in creating an account, having a parent account that created another account doesn't mean you own that account. There are a lot of instances where a friend makes an account for you or some account service does it. But it was a little suspicious, and they, of course, came out and then said, hey, our keys were compromised. It wasn't us. They were compromised. Somebody else got it. Either way, whether your keys were compromised or your keys weren't compromised and you did the hack, that's not good for a block producer.
No.
That number one, you can't keep control of your keys, or number two, you're stealing from people on the network. So either way, it was a horrible situation, and it's kind of crazy that they're still in the top 21. But I don't think that'll really change until we have higher voter turnout.
I don't know the whole story, but it seemed like they both had so the Singapore EOS guys and the Airdrops DAC guys, or one of the third parties that Airdrops DAC was working with, they both had private keys leak in their repo somehow. So the
Airdrops DAC one was on their GitHub.
Yeah, so it's kind of like negligence on both sides. I mean, I don't know who's right and who's wrong in this situation. I don't know enough about it, but man, it stirred up some controversy, and I hope the Singapore guys are innocent, but at the same time, like, I'm very very skeptical of that because it seems kind of shady.
It was the whole thing was weird because they could have easily come out and said they were testing the contract, which is what I thought at first when I saw it. Like, oh, they're a BP, they're doing a good service, they're looking for exploits so that then they can tell people how to fix them. But then when all those tokens went to Binance, the EOS that they had sold on a DEX, and they sent the EOS to Binance, it was like, oh, wait a minute, they're not doing this for the good of the community. They're doing this to make that 2,500 EOS. It's like, it just blows my mind. Like, for only 2,500 EOS, I understand that's a lot of money. Like, well, now it's a little bit less. That's 10 or 12 grand. But to put your whole reputation as a block producer on the line for $12,000 just seems so short-sighted. It's really crazy to me. But I do need to mention, though, with Airdrops DAC, I spoke with Blue Jays on Telegram about the exploit, and they've since went in and patched it. And I do think that their model will be very, very successful in the future, where they can, basically lease RAM to airdrops for a fraction of the cost, and it's a claim only thing. And I think it will be successful, but I'm glad they got the bug fixed now, rather than, a year from now when 100 or 200 or 300 projects could be affected.
Yeah, I love the concept behind airdrops, Dak. So the problem they're solving is, and it might not be as big of a problem now with the token price where it's at and the RAM market's settled down a little bit, but basically it's similar to how you could lease CPU using Shintai or in the future Rex. It's similar to that, where you're essentially leasing RAM from a decentralized organization that has a lot of RAM, and you could run an airdrop for significantly less money rather than having to put up 20 to 30 grand, might be like 10 grand now, but that's still a significant amount of money to buy RAM just to airdrop your tokens to the community. So airdrops DAC will handle the ownership of that RAM and the distribution of those airdrop tokens for a nominal fee to the I guess the project doing the airdrop. So it's
They basically do it at a third of the cost of what it would cost you now. But what's interesting is they also apparently have a VC arm attached to them. So if you're a project where you need seed funding, you need to find developers to build your idea, and you want them to do it all, you can actually go to Airdrop Stack and they'll give you seed funding, and they'll help you find developers. They'll help you do the airdrop. They'll really help you with the whole process. So I think we'll see a lot of projects that are not just airdrops come out of there, but also projects that were seed funded thanks to EOS Stack and their VC partner. So it's pretty cool that more of these funds are popping up that aren't even EOS VC funds.
That's awesome. And I noticed too that on that Galaxy Digital investment into the Mythical Games, another one of the VCs on that was OKCoin, who is also the owner of OK Blockchain Capital, and they're not an EOS VC, but they made an announcement back in like May or April about $100 million EOS development fund. $100
million of their own money going into EOS
Capital, who is a subsidiary of OKCoin. So we'll see what comes out of that.
Well, of OKX, the exchange.
Yeah, so OKCoin, OKX, OK Blockchain Capital, they're all kind of under the same umbrella. But OK Blockchain Capital is the one who put out the press release announcing the $100 million of their own money.
That's so like
companies. It's.
I remember when we saw that, we were thinking, oh, this must be EOS VC. Surely they didn't put up $100 million of their own, and it was like, oh no, wow, like that's their own money. They believe in EOS that much. So there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes.
And we're going to see, we've been talking about gaming, we're going to see a massive shift in gaming. And just to tell you about the numbers here, Fortnite's earned $1 billion from in-game virtual purchases. And the gaming collectibles market is something like $100 billion, or projected to be $100 billion over in the next year or so. There is a massive market here, and that's $100 billion of goods that's owned by developers in such a way that like maybe they'll shut down, maybe they'll change your items up, maybe they'll go bankrupt or whatever, and you just lose everything. They control the supply. They control absolutely everything about it. That's fine. It's their game. But maybe there's a better way. We're exploring better ways, and I really think that gaming is the inroad here. And I know you guys agree with me there.
I totally agree.
Where you thought that gaming was going to be the theme at the hackathon.
I mean, it was for our team.
It was for our team, yeah.
we had to pick Mike Novogratz.
I'm looking for his name, and I can't find it. I think it starts with an S, but the guy who I think is the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer at Block One, tweeted today basically saying that gaming is the way that blockchains will reach mass adoption, and that's why through EOS VC they funded Mythical Games. Exactly. It's like they've been listening.
Yeah, I've got a Mike Novogratz quote right in front of me from one of the many press releases that came out this past week. He says, quote, Mike Novogratz, "We believe that gaming, and specifically players' interaction with in-game economies and virtual goods, will play a key role in how the masses first discover the true potential of the blockchain." So it's exactly what we've been saying. Like, we're going to see this user adoption in a virtual world well before in the real world we see the mainstream adoption that we expect in the next 10 to 20
absolutely.
years.
Well, and if you think about it, it makes a ton of sense, because who right now values digital items? If you could, name a group of people in the world that values digital items, it's gamers. I mean, these are people that, whether it was buying gold on a website like you did with Madden coins a while ago, that was a digital item that you valued. Yeah, well, and even with items in games right now that you can't get any kind of monetary value out of, those items have a value to the gamer. So these are people that already know that digital things can have value, the digital things can be unique. They're already sort of primed and ready to accept this. And then when you add, a blockchain to that, and you say, hey, now you own the items, you can make the items, you can make money from the items, all these different things. I mean, the billions of people worldwide that play games are going to jump on top of this, and it's just going to be wild.
And I think that's only the beginning. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I think that's really only the beginning, because we can test economies, we can test how these tokenized economies will work in games, and then apply them to other real world, if I can call them that, industries.
Absolutely.
Where we take the lessons we learned from the virtual world and apply them to the real world, especially with AR and advancements like that.
Like, imagine you're playing like a car game or something where, and this isn't something that's non-existent, but like there's a part of the game where it allows you to like modify different pieces of your car, maybe custom like draw decals for your car. Imagine if you're able to like just create like your own spoiler for your own car, where it's very unique because you created the entire thing from scratch. And then another player in that game is able to look at that spoiler and say, I like that. How could I buy that off of you? And be able to buy that off of you for real money. That's where we're going here, is you own what you create, and you could transfer that asset to anyone in the world in a trustless way.
Well, and this has been a huge problem. When we talk about blockchains, it's always like, hey, get rid of the middleman. We don't need centralized control ruining people's lives. And generally we look at examples like, real estate in developing countries where the ledger that says who owns what property is frequently corrupted and they steal people's land. But the same thing happens in virtual games. If you look at Second Life, they called, and John Linden is actually not associated with the Linden
dollar.
I thought the
same thing.
Yeah. I was like, oh, it's the Second Life guy. Oh, no, it's not. It's somebody else. But anyway, they had what were called acts of Linden, where the game developer, Linden, would come in, Linden Labs, and make a change to the game that would lose people real money. And I think they actually got sued in the process of doing this. Same thing has happened in World of Warcraft. If you do one thing, if you're out of the bounds of the game and the GM doesn't like it, they can ban you. And all of those items, all of the work you put into that is now gone because they control it. But if you give that control back to the gamers, you're going to see things like, you could have a fork in World of Warcraft where Blizzard comes out with one patch and says, hey, we're going to do this thing. And the community says, no, we're going to do this other thing instead. We're going to fork the game into two separate worlds. So like the possibilities here are going to be insane, what we're going to see with gaming on blockchain. And now, of course, on EOS. And I do have to mention, one of them confirmed in the Mythical Games Telegram that they are planning on building on the EOS mainnet. So that is, makes the news even more exciting.
So I think what we're going to see here with the main net is we're seeing all these companies popping up, or projects popping up, who are going to be building on the main net. We're going to be cheering for transaction volume, because once the Rex is implemented and you're staking to the Rex, your income from the Rex is going to be tied to the number of transactions on the network. So you want the transactions to be really cheap, because that's advantageous to the developers. So the only way to make money if the transactions are really cheap is to have a lot of transactions. And that's what these games are going to bring. We need millions of transactions per day for real revenue to be distributed amongst the token holders on the Rex.
I think Rex will give us a real sort of a clear indication of what the current gaming demand actually is like on EOS. Because if you notice, anytime a CPU bump increases and suddenly people who have less EOS staked on their account can play again, we see things like a 20% or a 30% jump in the daily active users of EOS Nights. You see these big moves up in terms of daily active users on EOS dApps when suddenly CPU is now cheaper, when it's, you need less EOS stake to transact. So once Rex comes out and, I can go in and lease a bunch of EOS for 10 cents and make plenty of transactions, I think that number, all of those numbers across all the games are going to go much, much higher, because now the people on the lower end of that spectrum who may have 5, 10, 15 EOS staked can now play as much as they want. So I can't wait. It's going to be so awesome.
And it's frustrating on the game developer side too. Pete, why don't you explain some of your issues you're running into just making some like kind of hobbyist games at this point, and the issues you've run into with the resource costs?
Yeah, I mean, what I was talking about earlier was actually EOS Nights. I had all my EOS staked somewhere and didn't stake it to my active account. And I was like, you know what, maybe 50 EOS will be good. So I unstaked 50 EOS and staked it to an active account and played EOS Nights with it. And still I'd run into occasional, problems where the network got congested. I had to stake more.
Yeah.
And it's not even really it hits you fast. Suddenly you have enough for like 10,000 transactions, and then suddenly you don't have enough, to repair your item or whatever. And I know we'll fix this. And this is like one of the things I wanted to say about building this future economy, is that there's going to be hiccups and failures and things along the way. We're experimenting, we're learning how to do something that no one's ever done before. But whenever there's a bad headline out there, whenever your CPU won't work for a couple of minutes, it's not a a total failure. It's not the end of the line, guys. It's
definitely. Yeah.
It's
And these are things, I mean, to your point, that is definitely a real issue, but they're things that are still almost like being experimented with on the chain. Mm-hmm. So we saw, the initial CPU congestion threshold, which is, hey, when the network reaches this % of what we think is total capacity, freak out and go into congestion mode and don't let anybody transact above what they're guaranteed on the network. And that was first 10%, then it was 20%, then it was 30%. 30% caused some issues with missing blocks that BPs are still trying to figure out. So now it's 25% again. But we're still kind of figuring out and like doing this weird dance of like, oh, we make this change here and now CPU does this, or we make this change here and CPU goes down. So I think over time that'll get better, but I'm really expecting Rex to solve a lot of those issues for, the long term.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Rex for not only those reasons, but also to test out the referendum, because I think, like we've talked about in previous episodes, when the Rex is first implemented by the BPs, it doesn't necessarily need a referendum until it starts touching the system funds from the name auction fees and the RAM trading fees. And I think that'll be an awesome thing to see the whole community come together to vote this in on a referendum. That's what I'm looking forward to the most, I think.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, if we were able to get the community together to unlock the chain, I can't imagine that they won't come together to get a bunch of free money out of the name fees and name bidding and all that stuff,
That's my biggest question is, and I brought this up with Kevin and Miles, was how do we handle the fees that have accumulated from June 1st or whatever, June 3rd until today? So when we implement the Rex, it's going to start collecting these fees and pumping them into the Rex to be redistributed as profits. But what do we do with the 4 months of EOS that's been accumulated from the RAM trading fees and the name auction fees up until this point? Do we burn it? Do we set it aside for like a rainy day fund? I'm curious to see what the community comes up with on what to do with those funds.
More swag.
Yes.
Yeah, more backpacks to give out at the hackathons. That's what we need.
We're coming up on about an hour here, boys, and I want to really get this out for Thanksgiving. So I guess maybe we should say Happy Thanksgiving to everyone watching if you're in the U.S. Rob, do you have anything to close out with?
Yeah, I would just say, my personal thanks this Thanksgiving is just a huge thanks to, and this is genuine, huge thanks to the EOS community, whether you came up to us at the hackathon, whether you leave a comment, whether you tweeted us on Twitter. It's just so cool to be a part of this community. So Thank you to all you. Thank you to the people at Block One. If you're building something on EOS, thank you.
Pete, what are you thankful for?
I'm thankful that Rob and I will soon be doing an episode on URI.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be good.
Here.
I thought that was funny when people
no, I'll definitely do it. I'll commit in public.
We're at the Scaling Blockchain conference, and this is like Pete's introduction to the. I mean, it was my first time with the EOS community in person too, but I kind of talked with a lot of these guys online and stuff. But they heard Pete's voice, and they're like, "You sound familiar," because he did his URI podcast.
I talked with Rob. Awesome. I talked with Rob from Nougat, the team that won. And he comes up to me like the last is it Rob?
Rob, yeah.
Okay, it was Rob. Yeah,
Rob,
so many Robs. He comes up to me like the last possible minute before I'm leaving Scaling Blockchain, and he goes, "Are you Bitkenstein?" I was wondering to myself, who's that guy?
He's that crypto philosopher guy.
That guy. So yeah,
it was a cool. Yeah, I'll have to listen to it again, and then we'll go through the running. But I'll commit here in public. We'll definitely do that podcast, and we'll debate it out. And maybe I'll change my mind. I don't know.
I'm open to change too. It's all like I said. It's all stumbling and experimenting and trying to figure out a better future.
Definitely, yeah.
And I'm thankful for the EOS technical and block producer community to kick White Block's ass in an upcoming debate that I don't think has been publicly announced. Yeah. But there's currently being planned. Thomas Cox is going to be the middleman moderator of this. Some very technical guys from the EOS community, mostly block producer teams, and then 2 guys from White Block. We're going to be, not we, but they will be doing a live stream, I think on November 29th. Don't quote me on that. But it'll be a live stream of running all of these CPU tests and all of these different metrics that White Block had done on their own, but with the assistance of the EOS technical community to make sure it's fair. And there might be some stuff that we're not happy about with the results, but that's the game we're playing. We're creating a constructive conversation out of all of this, so it's not just FUD. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful to see that we could settle this as adults, I guess, instead of just pointing fingers at each other and saying you are or not a blockchain, and find that middle ground where we can agree. We all want to revolutionize and upend industries here, and we're all fighting like the same battle. We just have different techniques of how we're going to get there. So I'm thankful that we'll kind of put some of this argument to rest on what is or isn't a blockchain. We'll kind of answer some unanswered questions from their research and hopefully find a common ground. So I guess on that note, happy Thanksgiving to everyone watching in the U.S. Happy Thursday for everyone who's not in the U.S. And once again, I'm Zack Gall.
I'm Peter Keay.
And I'm Rob Finch.
And this is Everything EOS.